And
got it.
Okay, I am here with a new friend and an old friend, and all my friends there, and Alan Steinfeld, and this is a weekly gathering, and you never know who's going to show up here. But my good friend Nadi Hanna is here, and there's David Rosen, and Nadi. I'll talk to Nadi, and I'll talk to you, David, and then we'll just all have a little party. But Nadi, talk about your awakening into the metaphysical world, because you probably already were that, and now you're really public about this in front of the whole world. How'd that happen? What was your moment?
It was definitely accumulative. You know, a lot of people go for the flashy, you know, cosmic 2x4 across the head, where like, that's it, you know, some kind of contact experience, and they know everything's different. But I was chipping away at it. You know, it really started with a spiritual practice, and I had worked in mental health for about 10 years. And then I just knew it was too compartmentalized for me, and I needed to go towards integration and wholeness. So it was, you know, it was a leap of faith. I hung out in Costa Rica for a brief time to kind of gather my wits, and then made it back to the Northwest and just said, you know, show me what's going to happen. And I found unified physics. I found sacred geometry. I found crop circles, and then the advanced civilizations, and then the hybridization program. So it's been a really steady opening and following and listening and knowing that I was aligning with what makes sense to me. So,
but at one moment, did you say, oh my God, this is my path. This is what I'm going to dedicate my life to?
You know, interestingly, kind of. It was the kind of thing where it was really a slow, like sacred geometry was really the doorway, you know, and I knew that that's what makes sense. But sacred geometry in and of itself is the foundation for things, you know. So crop circles made sense. That was the next thing. It was like, oh God, this is what's really happening. And then, of course, the circle makers, and really getting in touch with our galactic community and how much more is going on than what we've been told. But if I were to be honest, this summer, Alan snuck me onto the hybridization, the ET human hybridization panel on Portal to Ascension. And if there was ever a moment, Alan, where I knew what made sense for me and what I was going to be doing, it was that moment.
Wow. I didn't know that. I didn't know that was that light bulb moment. Thank you. And we're going to talk about hybridization tomorrow, a special program I'm doing with Nadi. But a new guest to the show, David Rosen. Actually, there used to be someone I knew named David Rosen. I guess there's probably a million of them. Unmute, because we don't want to miss a word, David. David, unmute you. Right. We don't want to miss a word you're saying. It's like the little micro.
I'm unmuted. Sorry about that.
Great. No, so tell us about how did you said you were in the closet for a long time. What brought you out of
Actually, it was Marla. It was Marla's urging. And that's why I'm here. I mean, she said, you have to talk, you have to get on this little thing and talk about it. And you need to help people.
Yeah.
And you need to teach. And any kind of teaching that I've been doing in my life, which is, you know, substantial, has always been the undercover type, the small lessons, you know, to my children, to other children, to people. But I've never had the community or the ability or opportunity to talk to people. You know how it is. If you have a spiritual bent, you will find people here and there.
Mm-hmm. I find them everywhere. Yes.
Right. You find them everywhere if you're sensitive to it.
Yeah.
So now, you know, I feel like it's, you know, at Marla's urging, I'm being much more public about it. And it's almost like you do all this study and you across all these borders, and it's quite an interesting journey when you're all alone. Now, I did spend a good amount of my time studying Tibetan Buddhism and practicing. I did that for a long time. So that was a bit of a practice. That was a wonderful gateway in practice. And that's still, an important part of my life, but it's just, it's just one piece now. There's so much more happening.
But how can all three of us kind of create a framework where we communicate this is the reality? There is no other. Right. There's just, you could go shopping for shoes and watch the football game, but there's so much more. And that's what's always fascinated me. There's like when I finally realized for me, it was seeing Ramtha in person in 1981. And it's like, boom, that's not this woman, this housewife from Tacoma up there. There's something else going on. And but you had
to be open to it. You had to have that openness to and that ability and sensitivity to be curious about that. And if someone doesn't have that, it's very difficult to get a toehold. For me, I have to say, it's probably the meditation aspect of a practice that really allowed me to see other things, because it got me to be still enough to be curious.
But the practice,
and once you're curious, you discover.
You discover because it's you need an experience, right? I had out-of-body experiences. What did you have, Nadi? What were your experiences?
Well, I had, like I said, it's been really slow and subtle. But I did have some pretty profound crop circle activations. One of them was.
Were you in the crop circles?
No, one of them was 10 years ago, and it took me 7 years to have another activation to realize I had that activation. So, just to make that point is, when you're talking about how do you let people know, like, how do you tell them there's so much more out there? I'm really of the place, I agree with David, but then I think the only other place to go is compassion, right? Because if you're living in the 3D, you're not understanding that there's so much more. That's rough, man. To think that this is all there is. So if someone isn't necessarily coming, like David was saying, and saying, hey, what do you know? I want to know that too. Then the default has to be compassion. And because I didn't have a cosmic 2x4, I had the percolation. And so you never know how and where they are in their percolation phase. And you don't want to bludgeon them with the spirituality. You don't want to bludgeon them with the other options. It's gotta be.
I do have compassion, but I have frustration. I was talking to my mother today, and
that comes through, dear.
And it comes through that I was talking to my mother today.
No, your frustration.
Oh, right. Because she's just complaining, and she knows she's complaining. And I said, you have a choice. You can complain or you can be grateful. And she said, how do I stop complaining? I said, it's like, well, you just stop. It's an addiction.
Does your mom understand what your life's work is and what that's about?
Has no idea. No idea.
So again, she doesn't have the eyes or the bandwidth for it now.
Right.
And you can't, you can't force that. When somebody's ready, they're ready. And when they open, no matter what the portal is for opening, crop circles can be one, ET experience can be one, out of body experience, can be one. And I've had at least two out of three of those.
Oh, really? Okay, we'll talk about. But you know what Bashar says? I mean, and this is why I tried to communicate with my mother. It's circumstances don't matter. It's how you feel about the circumstances. And you can choose to be grateful, or you can choose to, Abraham Lincoln said, you can complain about rosebush having thorns, or you can be happy that thorns have roses, so it's, it's like that. So yeah, it's there's a mindset. It's like there is a mindset, and I think you're right, David. It's the it's a breakthrough. It's an experience when you have an experience of something other. Yeah,
Right.
it's crop circles, UFOs.
Like when people have, near-death experiences. These are people who often had absolutely no spiritual bent at all, no curiosity.
Right.
But all of a sudden, that, once you crack the facade, I always tell this story. One of my kids was once you crack the facade, you can't go back. You can't go back. Once you learn, once you see possibilities, once you, once you take enough acid, you can't unsee what you saw.
Right.
One of my kids, when he was like 11 or so, became a magician, and he was a super shy kid, but he was a fabulous magician and showman. And if you're a magician, what you do is you go to one of these magic stores, which are these crazy places, and there's clearly going to be a magician behind the counter, and he's going to say, "What are you interested in, young man? Would you like sleight of hand? Would you like a card trick? Would you like an illusion?" And you tell them, and they show you a trick. Once you say, "Oh, that's the trick, I'll take that trick," they show you how to do that trick. Once you see how to do the trick, it ain't magic anymore, and you cannot unsee it. So once you have an experience, once you have an encounter, once you have a curiosity, once you've seen the crack, you can't unsee it. You can't unsee it.
But so many people don't see it. It's like the crop circles. Once you realize, I don't think there's anyone in the middle of the night drawing like football-sized patterns in the wheat fields in England in the middle of the rain. What's going on? You have to make that switch, right, Nadi? How did you make that switch? Well, you were open to it, but how do you, Jesus said, for those who have eyes, let them see. For those who have ears, let them hear. It's like that.
I mean, how can people see these crop circles, Nadi, and not think there's something wondrous and other happening? Tell me.
Well, part of the advanced technology is that they work with wherever your consciousness is. So if you want to see that they're man-made, you will. And if you want to get that other civilizations are involved, that's what you'll get. That's part of their genius. That's part of why they're so advanced. But I want to say, Alan, I'm just putting together these things now, having known you for a little bit now, what I'm noticing is this passion of yours of like, how can people not see? I want them to have the information, so they can make this decision. I'm understanding the motivation for your 30+ year career now, where you really want.
Explain it to me. What is the motivation?
Well, you want, it seems like you want people to get it, and you want to give them as much information as they can to help them get it. But there's this part of you, right, that kind of drives it of like, I mean this lovingly, how do you not get it, right? Which I think is why I put the compassion out there, because people in their own time, but my point is I'm seeing this underlying aspect of you that explains, there's a lot of reasons that explain.
No, it's probably just to convince my family that I'm not crazy. Yeah.
Well, I don't know you as well as many people, but I feel my reaction to that is that I feel very strongly your motivation is pure generosity.
That's nice of you to say. I don't see it as generous. I see it as like curious. I'm not doing it. I'm doing it for myself because I want to live in a better world. I'm not complaining, but I think if everyone had that awakening, I feel compassion, like Nadi said, for people who don't get what a miracle everything is.
So a term that I used to hear in Buddhist circles a lot are enlightened self-interest.
Right. I guess.
Yeah. The self-interest comes to the fact that you want to see a world that's more integrated.
Yeah, I guess. And that Buddhists are totally compassionate and they just want to do it for others. Isn't that self-interest?
Well, of course, one of the basic, in Buddhism, you take your Buddhist vows, your refuge vows, and then the next vow you take is called the Bodhisattva vow. The Bodhisattva vow is a vow to stay as a sentient being, return as a sentient being until all sentient beings are enlightened.
That's self-interest, because you really can't wake up until everyone's woken up, because we're all connected. So that's enlightened self-interest too. Nothing wrong with it, but don't you think so? I mean, it's fine.
Sure.
We're
all. I don't know that resonates for me, because I think that we're moving into I don't know how to reconcile these two, but I really feel like consciousness is going to determine timelines, and that we're moving into, we're seeing a bifurcation of the 3D fear-based trajectory and a more 5D love unity consciousness. And so I don't know that idea of all for one and one for all fits anymore. And it's not like we're ditching out, but people are making conscious choices, and there's at certain point, there's a limit to how much you can hang in there for everybody to come on, and.
You mean there's a bifurcation in the timeline, and those that don't want the reality that we and maybe everyone watching is aware of, they can keep their old reality and create this. I've heard that years ago, and they could create the worlds that keep them in a materialistic point of view. And that's all there is until they realize that there isn't.
I think ultimately, if you really look hard across boundaries for a long time, you find out that there really aren't those boundaries. The idea that, that there is a you and I, or a them and you, it doesn't hold up over time in the most rigorous examination.
I'm with you. I mean, it's an illusion of separation. I totally get that, but I also think that in our reality, I'm really on board. Alan knows that I'm a big fan of this idea of a solar flash and a solar flare, or some kind of.
That's her escape hatch. It's the solar flash.
No, man, it's not an escape. Okay. If you look at all of the evidence, it is really likely to be.
I don't know what that is. Would you?
Explain it to everyone watching, because it's quite dramatic, and I'm an optimist, but Nadi's a realist. So
this is really what floats my boat. And more, I mean, of course, we find evidence to support and substantiate our beliefs, right? But there is more and more evidence coming out with people who are undergoing regressions. They report across many sessions and individuals that they have come here from other places. They know where they've come from, and they have come here to assist humanity during a time where there will be a mass activation, usually in the form of a solar flare or a solar flash. If you look into our sun, the geology, the history of our sun, the composition of our sun is changing. There's a lot of evidence to support that this is actually a possible thing. You've got indigenous cultures, you've got channelers, you've got massive amounts of people saying the same thing completely independently, that we will
tell us what happens when there is a solar flash.
Yeah. So when there is a solar flash, I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen. You could be talking cataclysmic impact. It all depends on the significance of the flash, right? But my belief is that we're going to have some really large photonic activation, where those of us who have been working and practicing and understand that there's so much more and understand our multidimensionality, we're going to be able to use that activation to take us to the next level of a dimensional reality. And we're here to assist those who really don't know what's happening, but maybe could make the leap. And then some folks are going to ride their ticket out. So to me, it solves all the problems. And then I was listening to this woman. I'm going to try to put her information in the chat. So maybe Alan, you can put it on the YouTube. It's called The Prophecy, and she doesn't claim who she is. And it is this amazing summary. And it involves what she calls like a light pulse that would be a combination of perhaps solar impact, but also from humanity's consciousness, where enough of us activate our light body, our dimensionality, that it's really like this huge pulse of awakening. It's not like this cataclysmic impact that would literally wipe out grids and civilizations.
Will that reawakening also include Alan's mom?
Maybe, but
No, but the
just
question is, it's funny, but it's not funny. The question is, if you do not have the inclination to see, if you're not curious, does a solar flare, or is it just the folks who, have developed their third eye?
Well, we haven't had one in about 300 years, and we just went through a solar minimum. Now there's a lot more sunspots. There's a lot more I guess, what do they call it? EMFs, where solar flare emission heading towards the Earth. It affects the electric grid every time it happens, and a huge one can affect what, Nadi? What will happen when we get hit by a huge solar flare?
Well, I mean, you just kind of covered it, but the other piece is geomagnetically, we are weakening our electromagnetic field. We are also making ourselves more vulnerable because we're just depleting and raping the Earth and her ability to, shield from these influences. And so it's a multi-level, like we're building towards an event. And what it would happen is it could wipe out the grid. Pretty much it could be chaos. But to your point, David, like bad chaos, like, bad, like infrastructure.
Not like this chaos, like that chaos.
Like that chaos, infrastructure breakdown, stuff like that.
Huh?
So to your question, David, it's a chance for people to go if they want to go. It could be, there could be a lot of death. It's true. We're very fragile. We don't realize how fragile we are. So a lot of death, but here's the really fun part. These folks have come, myself included, I imagine us as well, or anyone watching, we have come from other civilizations. We're starseeds, we're volunteers, we've come to help. And we are on the team who know the ETs. And the ETs are ready for this event. They know this is happening too. So they're going to show up. And for those who aren't really ready to check out, one of the things is an option for them to go on the ships that would be like cloaked in some manner where humans weren't so scared of them.
Can't we absorb the light photons and evolve? Isn't that also an option? That when the light particles hit us, it illuminates the biophotonic resonance within the cells, and we start to have, because I think solar radiation I've done a paper on this, really responsible for evolution. They can't understand how one species becomes another. Darwin didn't know. He said there's adaptation, but he never understood, and most Darwinians don't know how an elephant happened, or how does like different a dog separate from a cat. Where's the genetic mutation that allows that to happen? And I think it's in solar radiation activity. Man-made radiation is dangerous, but solar cosmic radiation is an evolutionary factor. And no one talks about this. They just say, well, we don't know how species go from one to another. But I think that is the key. So we have a chance, I think, with this solar flare to become a different human being. And we're already moving in that direction. Yeah.
We are. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an event, right? Like, yes, solar activity can, sorry, my phone is ringing. Increased photonic exposure can be activating our DNA. And, you got to go, if you're wondering about elephants and dogs and how do we evolve, and there's, irreducible complexity where all of a sudden things were very advanced with humans, you have to start going into the conversation about hybridization and the influences of civilization's genetic modification over time. And that level of genius and technology, that level of sophistication, knows how to work with solar activation. Our DNA are programmed for this upgrade. It's exciting. Hi, Kat.
Well, I want to welcome Kat Devine, my new best friend here. Kat, have you heard about the solar activations that are possible and have happened in the past?
Oh, please share. Maybe it'll ring a bell.
Oh, no. Well, we're going into a solar maximum where the sun is emitting high-powered flares toward the earth. And then if a really big one hits us, it could take down the power grids. It could, it happened in Göbekli Tepe. They buried everything. There were these lightning. People went underground for years. It doesn't have to be that extreme, but it could. You get any? Kat is a psychic, David, and do you get any psychic impressions about the future and the sun?
Do you see a solar flare heading our way?
Oh, well, first I want to say hello to David, and Marla says hello also. So very nice to meet you. So let me.
He found Marla by watching this program, which I think is amazing. I can't believe people are watching.
By the way, a plug for the book. I see your little icon for the book over here. I just bought it today.
Oh, thank you.
I can't believe it took me so long, but I bought it today, so I will start tomorrow.
Thank you. Let me know what you think of it. If you like it, write a review on Amazon.
I will.
But
it's always divine timing, as I say. It's always divine timing.
That's
never
why they
too
call
late.
Divine. But do you see anything psychically for the future there?
Wow. That's, So give me, first of all, I get very excited. And when I say excited, it's really the energy, the power that's coming forward. And I feel like coming forward, it's almost like I want to move with it. So in other words, don't let it slam into you. I feel like it's really about the process of really, it's like the wave, riding the wave is what I get. I let it
solar flare, you mean?
Exactly. Whatever's coming at us, it's like riding the wave. So I don't feel like anything's going to be shut down or shut off, or at least any full extreme. But I do feel like that energy that's being pushed to us is kind of like, it's okay, relax and allow the flow. Does that make sense? I mean, because that's what I feel.
It does.
Completely.
It does.
When is it coming? What do you see?
I'm not seeing, I'm feeling. And when I feel it, I feel power. I feel pushing is what I feel. I feel like this. It's kind of like, here's another one, but I don't feel like it's like a heaviness. Like it's really like when you were saying it really shut down a lot. What did you say? Where did it shut down? Tell me a little bit more details about that. But
Nadi, go ahead. Tell her.
Well, there's been a few instances. The one that I know that's most measurable because we had technology at the time was, oh man, I'm just blanking on it. Do you remember, Alan? It was in
it was in 1857. It knocked out the telegraph. But that was the only technology we had. Was our most sophisticated technology was the telegraph.
Right.
The one telegraph. We had one telegraph machine.
We had one telegraph.
But the thing of it is that we're, Alan mentioned we're moving on the solar maximum. We have 3 more years. We're in, the 8th progression of year. And so I don't think you can do when, Alan, time is so malleable. Time is speeding up. It is so relative. And I think that's why I think that instead of maybe one large event, although I'm a believer, I think there's increasing photonic activity. And I think that those of us who are tapped in are able to receive and allow the upgrades that are then of service. We are feeding that energy back into the grid, which then becomes collective. So there's this incremental activation, but there could also be a larger event, which would, any kind of cellular communications, any kind of all of our systems could really have an interruption. So I just like to prepare for that possibility.
But it's also about our thoughts.
How do you prepare for it?
Yeah.
Well, yes. Tell us that.
How do you prepare for it?
Well, I think that the inner work is the best way to prepare, but I have a lot of emergency preparedness things.
Really? Are you talking about flashlights and water and cash?
Yes, it would be wise to have emergency preparedness plans, but that's kind of the 3D aspect. I think the best way to prepare is really to tune into your system, raise your vibration, have harmony, have integration in your being, and connect with your own energy system so that you can absorb, so that you can flow with, and so that you can share in the uplift of humanity. We have the potential. That's what the solar activity would be contributing to. So I don't know.
So
if that
one of the most important people that Alan introduced me to is Bashar.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So
We all love
Bashar,
Bashar.
when I listened to Bashar, he would say that there are infinite timelines and infinite possibilities, and that essentially everything that can happen will happen. So, Nadi, you have this specific kind of insight into a particular path, a particular future, which is super real. But, my point of view is our infinite timelines, infinite possibilities, of which that clearly will be one of them, because anything that can happen will happen.
I totally agree with David, and I totally agree with where you put your attention and focus. If you're, and this is my personal, is that I'm not going to prepare, because then you just put that into effect. So for me, I am going with the flow, and I always know that everything is going to always work out. So for me, I ride that wave. You get the highs and the lows, but as you keep on tapping into your higher self, your soul self, aligning with joy, raising your frequency, which is exactly what you said, Nadi, that makes it so those waves they aren't like tidal waves. They're like little teeny tiny ones. And so for me, that's how I feel. I do feel that everything kind of comes in this, pattern, or even this, whether it's a higher frequency, or a strong power surge, whatever it may be that's coming at you. You can take it any way. You can look at it as like the world is over, or you can keep on shifting, going, it's just a little wave and I'm going to get through it.
So it's more informative than it is determinative.
Sure.
It's information, it's experience.
It is. It's how what you put in your thought about how you're receiving it. If it's, again, life-threatening, if it's, again, you have to be able to raise your vibration, raise your frequency, and always know that there's going to be another pattern. There's patterning, period. This is what the universe is. It's patterning, correct? So you want to be able to ride that wave.
Right. But what about what we don't know, the unknown, that is always manifesting every minute? We have to be open to the fact that the universe is always evolving.
Yes, but it's also individual. You're creating it, your own reality. It is individual, even though we're collective. So
we're creating it, but we're not creating what we don't know until we know it, right? So this is what Joe Dispenza talks about. He says, he asks the universe, he says he creates something in his mind, but then show me something more, so I know that I'm having an exchange with the creation, so just saying, can you tap into what you don't know, Kat, and tell us what you might suspect?
That's the surrendering. And the reason that you should be surrendering is you put out the intention for good, for the greater good, for joy, love. Those are the frequencies, compassion, peace, all of those things. So why would you think anything other than that?
So are you saying, Kat, that if you're putting out fear,
of course,
you're going to get fear?
Of course you are.
Right.
And I have to add two things. One is that I believe in the aspect of pray to Allah and tether your camel. We do live here. And for me, and we all live in the world that we want to live in. And for me, it helps me to settle my anxiety and step into doing the work of higher vibrational work if I know my 3D is secure, quote unquote. Like, it has really helped me to have a sense of, here would be my emergency preparedness, because we are so fragile. We think we are not, and we are, and change is coming. We are creating environmental change. We are creating civilization and societal change and economic change. It's inevitable. And it helps me to do that. And then simultaneously, David, absolutely, Bashar and Abraham and all of the teachings of follow your passion, that passion and that joy is part of the secondary piece or the primary to lift the vibration, to increase to the positive frequencies on the planet.
Did I hear you say, though, is it part of the idea of these solar events that they help transform you and propel you to a 5D consciousness?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Well, then you won't need
Yeah.
your water.
I would love to become a breatharian and get nourishment, from the sun. I really would. But it brings me, it doesn't make me, it brings me comfort in what feels like a very precarious world to have some emergency supplies.
It's ground. It gives you ground,
but I always,
right?
wait a minute. I just want to put out there that you actually own something. You said something as I have anxiety. So you've actually created that in your environment by even speaking it. So when you're doing that, and again, and you can let it go, as you know, we all can do that. Doesn't mean you're not feeling it, but just like Dr. Joe Dispenza, whatever situation you are carrying or belief or fear, pain, it doesn't matter. I'm not trying to minimize it whatsoever, but to create something new, you got to let that one go. You've got to go into that 5D reality. You have to raise your frequency and then put out what it is that you want. So which means that, the fear-based reality is the anxiety or preparedness or all of these other things, which is what you're bringing into reality.
I'm with you. I know that for me, honoring the anxiety. Yes, it's true. I am naming that. I am creating that reality in it for myself. And part of how I work with that to minimize it and be able to focus on the higher vibe is by taking care of a 3D need. I do live here. I do have anxiety. It feels like it would be denial to not understand that and to not acknowledge it. And when I work with it and acknowledge it and create a small 3D reality, that's when I feel secure enough. That's when my system can lessen, can open up to the higher security of my connection with my guides, my angels, the field. But I had to address that first. I couldn't.
Because it's a matter of ground. It's a matter of ground for you.
But wait, what's your anxiety? What's your anxiety about, Nadi? What do you have anxiety, if you don't mind sharing with the world?
Yeah, it just has to do, if I could put my finger on, there's a lot of different things, but it just has to do with suffering, lack, fear of not being able to endure big changes.
That's when you think about the future. That's when it's like, oh, what's it going to be? But in the moment, if you're present, do you still have anxiety?
No. Definitely working on that reality, right? Absolutely. And I'm in Sedona and I'm surrounded by these wonderful light beings who are just like lovingly pummeling me with, a similar message, Kat, of like, what's your choice? What are you focusing on? And so I am massively moving towards present moment. Hey, everything is fine right now. I get that. And then building on that. And in order for me to get to that place of being loose enough psychically and emotionally stable enough, I needed to take a 3D step. So it's both. It's not an either or, right? And I feel so much better and I'm so much more able to move into
the anxiety sounds to me like it's not from the present, it's from some habitual past that you have learned to live with, but it's no longer really part of your immediate psyche, but yet it's like an addiction. You're used to it. So, do you
feel like it's a survival thing, Nadi?
All right.
Okay, guys, call me, Nadi. We'll work on it.
No, I think you're fine, Nadi.
I think it's important, though, that there's a lot of people that suffer from that. And so I think it's wonderful if you're okay with talking about it, because I think it's, a lot of people would love to be able to hear, how you work through it, if you want to share that. And if not, just raising your vibration. That's kind of the foundation right there. Raise your vibration and how you do that. And I think what you're doing is fantastic and beautiful. So thank you for opening up there.
Yeah, thank you. I think it takes, I think it takes a development of self-awareness to understand what's going to allow you to shift your energy, right? And before you came on, Kat, we were talking about what our awakening process had been. And mine has been slow and steady dedication to inner work, inner practices, meditation, yoga, entheogenic journeys, you name it, all of the different crop circle activations, just receiving that slow and steady activation that my system could integrate. I do not think I would be able to function if I had like a massive intervention where all of a sudden I was seeing the other realms, right? So I have been slow and stable progress that I can build on, that allows me to have that self-awareness, that allows me to attend and reprogram. But it's been slow, and when it's slow, it's anchoring for me. It can stick, right? And so I am dedicated to my alignments. And so but I am coming out of deep, thick programming of fear and anxiety. So when I take little steps, whether it's emergency preparedness or whatever, that is part of my reprogramming. I am caring for, I am honoring those parts of myself that are real. They are a driving force. As they are attended to and comforted, then I can really make the shift. Otherwise, I'm like in a little bit of denial. I'm maybe not being loving to myself. This has been a whole, decades, right? Decades. So there's really a very potent shift towards maintaining a high vibrational frequency. And that's my dedicated life. So that is, having an emergency preparedness list is part of my strategy for being, for having a stable nervous system, which you have to have if you're going to try and tap, the other realms. But, lots of work to dig out of what our society can really.
Well, that's another thing that Joe Dispenza talks about a lot, which is recognizing that programming. And if you don't recognize the program, the automatic thinking, and all of the programs that you've had from your parents, from your life, from all of your past lives, then you certainly can't change it.
Right.
So you have recognized the pattern.
Let's get Dr. Joe on here there, Alan.
Well, I have had him on my show. He's gotten really busy. Have you seen my interview with Dr. Joe?
Yeah, but we need him with us.
Well, sure, but he'd rather probably make $100,000 by somewhere around. But he's great.
I doubt that very seriously.
I knew Joe back, when he was at the Roundtable school, and he was just talking about like changing a reality, and I knew he was a superstar then. He would come out and say, "Hello, geniuses," and now he's really taken off. And so, but I did a bunch of interviews with him just as he was starting to become like his own thing, and he's still evolving that. He's still
digging think more. Stop. Yeah.
Well, he's doing more really valuable research and opening up to other realms. Like I asked him about ETs years ago, and he goes, "No, I don't want to talk about that." And now he's talking about it, though. So he's talking about these beings showing up at the conferences he does. So, but David,
yes,
you're our new guest today. What do you want to give us some of the insights that helped you evolve? Like what?
I from my earliest memories.
You want to pin him? Can't see him.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'll pin him. Yes. Go ahead. Yes. Go ahead.
So from my earliest memories, I must tell you, I was the most fearful child. I was scared of everything. I was terrorized, absolutely terrorized by life.
Did you grow up in New York? Were you growing up?
Yeah, I grew up in Bergen County.
Oh, okay. Okay. And then what changed that? What turned it around?
Well, this was, I would, I'm 65 now, but I would say, for 50 years, I lived in pure survival, pure anxiety, even with all of this study. And this study was motivated by the study of consciousness, was motivated by looking for some comfort, essentially. Comfort and some reason and some structure and some order and some reasons.
Mm-hmm. And how did you find it? What was the first thing that said, "Oh, there is something to allow me to have hope in something greater"?
I think we talked a little bit earlier about how unaccessible a lot of modalities were. Not only unaccessible, but unacceptable. So you could go to a library and look for some sort of mystical book or some in a way that you can find in every library right now, number one. And number two, can just tune into new realities and learn everything you need to know. But this stuff was not accessible. So what I grabbed onto at first in the late 60s and early 70s were, you know, Ram Dass and Alan Watts. And also that was a time when, you know, Buddhism was becoming sort of a cool and interesting thing. So that was the first idea, the Buddhist sort of basic idea was the first thing that gave me my ground. Nadi, if you understand that. The first thing that was my bottled water. That gave me not only some ground and some understanding and practice, but most importantly, it's a practice, and it brought me meditation. Although I did learn TM when I was 14, but meditation is the gateway for me, because you don't meditate unless you have some sense, some idea that there is consciousness.
Right.
And that's what you learn in that space.
Right. And so this is the big shift. Some people, and we started off talking about consciousness, and David got into this because he was obsessed with consciousness, and all of us realize there's something more. Are you okay, Nadi? Are we keeping you awake? No.
Sorry, I had to get up really early today. So yeah.
I know you
And
have to
there's
go
Christmas
soon.
shopping to be done.
Oh yeah. I actually have a Christmas party to go to soon, but no, I just like having these discussions and hearing all these points of view and listening to people. Someone in the chat there said, Nadi, yeah, she gets what you're saying. And thank you. And, you know, we're all evolving. I do think something big is coming to planet Earth, not just UFOs, or maybe it is, but some huge shift of awareness, and either you'll get it or you won't get it. We're in this bardo state, this in-between state. I think the whole COVID thing was a preparation for a world event. We're in a world event, but I'm doing a predictions panel on New Realities, January 6th, where I have 6 different astrologers coming and talking about what they see for 2022. And I think we're coming out of something, but we're going into something bigger. We're coming out of a kind of small tunnel and opening up to a big, wide, unknown world. There's something unknown that's possible. Here's Elizabeth joining us.
I want to challenge you briefly, though.
Okay, sure, anything. Yeah.
When you said we're having a worldwide event, and some people are going to get it, some people aren't. I disagree with that statement. I think that if we're talking worldwide, you don't want to have a standard of what people are going to get. We don't know. We don't get to know how anything's going to go in a global realm. And I believe if there's some sort of solar activation, if there's a photonic upgrade, everybody's going to get something. So it was like,
well, everyone won't get that. But for this thing, the COVID thing, people just wanted to go back to normal. They just said, they're planning on, and there is no going back, right, Elizabeth? Welcome, Elizabeth Satoris, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Tell us.
Hi, I am so sorry. I thought I was going to be able to make it on time, and I'm still iffy and have to go in and out.
No, I'm not going to go that long because I have a Christmas party. But tell us about that. You know, Elizabeth, David's our new friend here. And
Hi, David.
Elizabeth is a scientist.
I hope you recorded this, Alan, so that I can hear David.
Yes,
okay.
It's all on YouTube. But Elizabeth, Nadi thinks the solar flare is coming. They're going to shake us all up. I think there's something coming. What do you think?
It's 6 o'clock.
What do you think is coming to the planet from the standpoint we're in now? From this perspective,
You were saying something about COVID?
Oh, I was saying COVID was a worldwide event, and some people are just wanting to return to normal. I think that was just a preliminary event for maybe a huge solar flash, maybe the UFOs landing, or maybe something we can't imagine is going to.
I don't think COVID had anything to do with solar flares.
No, I'm not saying it did. I'm saying
solar flares, obviously, nor do I think it's going to be over soon. They're going to keep this going for a long time.
Right.
This is part of getting obedience in the world. I'm sorry, but
what is a way out of all this, Elizabeth?
Waking up to who we really are, waking up to our oneness, the idiocy of, everything from nuclear weapons to destroying your own planet. As the ETs have told us so often, stop destroying your own planet, right? And they probably came here originally because some of them at least may have destroyed other planets and were looking for a habitable one. So we're in this for the long haul, Alan. Although climate change is going faster and faster, and we have no way to stop it in the 3D world. There's no way to stop it anymore. We've passed the tipping point. Whether we can do that through our higher consciousness or not remains to be seen. We certainly have to push for the higher consciousness every which way we can, and to get all the help we can from the friendly ETs.
You really think we're past the tipping point where the climate change is just
and it'll confuse people, because when the Gulf Stream pump stops, and it's winding down now because of global warming, you're going to get a spell of colder weather in North America and Europe, because that warm water isn't coming up from the equator anymore, isn't being pumped up to keep us relatively warm. So that's going to cause a kind of mini ice age. I suspect it'll be very short-lived, and it will be part of the process of the melting ice and the global warming. So look, the more the ice melts, the hotter it gets, the more the ice melts. That's a runaway.
Is there anything we can do about that? I mean, I want to be hopeful.
Not in the 3D world. Oh yeah, what we can do about it is adapt. I went to Morocco years ago, as I've mentioned, to learn how people lived really well with low-tech solutions in hot deserts. So I know.
But would you agree that our 3D adventures, our 3D life is only a small part of each of our consciousness?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
so it is possible there'll be a solar flare, and the ice caps will melt and stuff. But even that won't be the end. In my view, won't be the end of our existence.
Right.
It will be the end of this consensus reality.
Yes.
But Elizabeth,
yes. We've built new civilizations before, as we know, from Atlantis and Mu, and all the way. we do this. We destroy ourselves and we rebuild ourselves. And yes, that's what we're going through. But this is the first time, I think, that the human species has ever affected the entire planet. And that just means that we all, as a species, have to learn to cooperate with each other, not just in the pockets that many indigenous people did so in. So it's a big challenge. And David, I do think this human adventure is not going to be over because of it. So I'm right now connecting people in South Africa with people in Germany who have to leave because in Germany they're shutting down the doctors that are curing COVID. And so people have to escape to other places and build the new civilization again and again and again from the ground up. And when these pockets all convene, get in touch with each other and do it, it can go very fast because we know what to do. We know how we should be living with each other, right? I don't want to preach to this choir.
But what's on the other side of that, Elizabeth? So what do you say?
I hope a happier, more cooperative humanity that meets everybody's basic needs so that we have time for all the enormous creativity we're capable of without destroying the planet.
Yeah. I see that. I see that's possible. I don't think we've hit the final hour, but of course there were those tornadoes that were historic just in the Midwest that's
just to the beginning. That's little practice runs.
So is it like, have faith, but tie up your camel, as Nadi likes to do? She's always tying up that camel.
Kat, what do you think about all this?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, I definitely agree with Elizabeth as far as we adapt. That's what we do. We've always learned to adapt. That's part of the process. And it's part of staying, again, with, the fear-based reality or the love-based reality. You just keep on shifting into that new consciousness, which is raising your frequency. And we're all doing it. I mean, And it's the breaking of the two earths, really, right? So the ones that are staying in the 3D reality, it's starting to break apart now. And the tipping point, like Elizabeth said, is basically where we're at right there. And this is where it's starting to break apart. So I definitely feel like stay with that focus on where do you put your attention and awareness. We're always adapting. We always have. I mean, this isn't the only lifetime.
Well, we have to adapt our consciousness. It is about changing the way we think.
And we definitely are, even these programs. And I mean, and that's the tipping point. I mean, look at how many people come together all over the world, tens and thousands and 100,000 people, they all meditate together. I mean, we are doing that now. We have shifted.
Yeah.
So everybody here is talking about a tipping point. Nadi talks about tipping points that are related to solar flares. Elizabeth talks about tipping points where people can have the consciousness to value resources and try and save the planet. And Kat, you're talking about that just in terms of, consciousness. So that's the point. The point is we're at a point where we must, at every level, do the things that need to be. Tip O'Neill once said, all politics are local. And I feel that way about consciousness and advancement of vibration and the future. It's all local. All politics are local. You start with yourself.
But David, I want to say you're pretty much in a mainstream world. You're selling real estate. You're in Chicago. I mean, what do the normal people on the street who's not even, consciousness is not even a word in their vocabulary. What do you do with those people?
Everybody has a journey and everyone has a process. And, everybody, did you know Isaac Bentoff? You knew him, right?
I didn't know him, but I've seen his, maybe Elizabeth knew him. Did you know him? Stalking the wild pendulum.
Oh, yeah.
So when he would say that everybody, you are going to be enlightened. Everybody will be enlightened. We're all on a path. And it takes a lot of years with blinders on, just seeing consensus reality and thinking that all I need is a Mercedes and a beach house. We've all lived many, many lives in that realm. And then over time, there's always a crack in that of reality. Everybody experiences at some point, and then you take the first step. Many people here have described what that first step was for them. Mine was the sheer terror of being alive. Other people may have been less dramatic, but we all keep going one foot in front of the other until we get to a point where we see a crack and a light coming through a place that we didn't know existed. And how you can do that is just be yourself and do your practice and being kind and compassionate, but also educating and helping in quiet ways as well as big ways.
But I'm just saying, when you're dealing with those people, do you want to say, wake up, smell the coffee, or do you just, allow them to do what their path is, right?
What I would like to do is co-create a moment with them that gives them pause. Gives them a moment to think, wow, maybe this isn't as see and say as my mom told me it was going to be. Or Alan's mom.
What were you going to
Yeah, I think two things I'd like to add. One is I'm a big believer in the compassion. And the other thing is that, because I've been there, I know that's a hard reality, right? And the other thing is, my belief now is go towards the party, follow your passion, have a great time. And everybody else looks at that and goes, oh, wait a minute, she's having a good time. Like, let's talk about that. And that's what makes sense to me. It's not about anybody's got to do anything, right? There's some shared belief in that. And the other thing is that primarily has to do with vibration, right? So if you are focusing on your vibration, you're going up, you're going to the party. That's the uplift. And there's the piece where we are influencing each other collectively in the field. And the other thing, I know I'm a big believer in the solar flash. I talk about it a lot, crop circles. I have some pretty solid drums that I beat. The other one I want to say, though, is that the kids coming onto the planet these days, the hybrid kids, they have an elevated level of consciousness. They come in with a higher frequency. So they're like this exponential boost in terms of the collective field and our ability to lift up and off. So they are another aspect to me of our global evolution, our humanity's evolution. And I just wanted to throw that into the mix in terms of what is upgrading us.
No, I think that's key, because that's where the hope, that's where not just in the next generation, but in the shift that people are waking up. People are waking up. There's like spontaneously, people are telling me they've had a UFO experience out of nowhere. I mean, there is a change happening, and I'm hopeful that something big and good and possible, we'll see, but I'm putting that out there. Well,
this is also something that Bashar talks about.
What?
That it's an evolutionary process, that we're going through a period of refinement and raising a vibration of the consciousness of the people on Earth. And that includes the people who understand the broader context and the people who don't.
Well, listen, it's really, this is how it is. It is not the circumstances that matter. It's your state of being that matters, which is what Bashar says. And I say that literally to myself daily, like it's not the circumstances matter, it's the state of being that matters. And that's how you raise your frequency. So then when you are around those other, people, when you're around people that have a lower vibration or a lower frequency, or it just doesn't feel good to you, how can you change that? How do you shift? You can't change them, but you can change you, which then reflects onto them, right? So even you can see the light within them. I always see light in someone. I don't care how dark they are. There's always some light there, and you want to focus on that light. So it's your state of awareness. And when you see that light, it literally changes the frequency, the vibration immediately. So for me,
it helps. It helps because that cat actually met my mother. So and she helped her. She did. She was open.
Your mom, see, I saw such beauty there. I saw such love there and some compassion there. She's, yes. And again, sometimes maybe someone else can't see that, but I feel that. I can see that.
I see that, but it's hard. People have to want to shift. And I think that's what we're really up against on the planet. You talk about climate change, and then people are still throwing plastic bags away, and you pass like some plant with the smoke going up in the air. And it's like, how could this still be going on? I mean,
leading by example. I like to say it like this, which is kind of a silly way to say it, but I say it as if you're running a marathon with your friend and you have this ambition to keep going because you see the finish line, you see what's at the finish line, but they're stopping to complain and to tell you all about your problems. Well, if you slow down, and then pretty soon now you're walking. You're not getting anywhere, because once you start to feed into that lower energy, now you guys aren't going anywhere. So you have to keep going and seeing that vision, keep going, and then encourage them to do that. And that's what you're doing. But you can't feed into that low vibrational energy. It doesn't help them or you.
Well, one thing I would do when I lived in Hawaii, I lived in Maui, I would pick up garbage. I said, how could someone throw a piece of paper there in this beautiful land? Of course, I'm not doing that in New York because
you'd be there for a very long time.
It's an endless job, but in a beautiful place like that, or in Sedona sometimes, it's like, wow, what's that garbage doing?
But when you're doing that, how you look at that garbage, right? So are you doing it with joy? Like, I love cleaning up the planet.
I'm doing it. No, I'm doing it because I'll tell you, I'm doing it. This is a beautiful place, and I want to keep it beautiful. This is my contribution to the beauty by picking up that plastic bag or that.
As long as it makes you feel good, then there's the shift right there.
It makes me feel good to see beauty. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing that we've all talked about, which is interesting, is, and Alan, you're so much a part of this, is community, having community with like-minded people who do see a broader picture, have a wider bandwidth, and bringing people together and creating this dialogue it's very infectious.
Well, is what I love to do. I love doing that because we're all in this together. so we have to keep talking. And that's why I'm doing this every week. But I think next week, because of Elizabeth, we're going to do Thursday nights. Okay, Elizabeth? Thursday afternoon.
And what time?
Well, 5 o'clock, I guess maybe is good.
We might have to talk about that one.
Or later. We could see what's good for you on Thursdays, Elizabeth.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think most of my Thursdays are okay. I have hydrotherapy sessions that keep shifting, and sometimes they're on Thursdays and sometimes they're on Fridays.
Okay. Well, let's just see how it goes.
I prefer this time of day is better for me.
Okay. What time of day is it there with you now?
For me, where? In Hawaii?
Yeah.
Oh, your 5 is my noon.
It's 6:15 here, so it's
Yeah, so it's
7.
it's 1:15 here, 1:16 here.
I'm just bringing it up because this idea David brought up of community is part of the key of making the shift globally. And this is why, Nadi's information and Kat's reading, of course, Elizabeth's science, her life of science, and what do you call yourself? A cosmic snoop? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the wonderful thing about while we still have the internet is that we build community this way across the globe, that I can connect the German family with the South African community. And, this kind of thing is wonderful for solving our problems at a global level. It's very important. All the eco villages can be in touch with each other. We can know about Sarvadia and Mondragon and all these successful human cooperatives where they are getting along well with each other. And we can, spread that around the world, and that goes fast, along with, I like the idea of just make sure you're having fun what you're doing so that other people will want to do it with you, that you become an attractor. Yeah.
Well, I think the decentralization and yet staying connected even more might be one solution for the future of the planet. We can live in small, renewable communities where no one is homeless or penniless, and we can take care of like small collective societies and be connected to the rest of the planet.
And still be connected.
Exactly.
Yes, that. And still have the technology, still develop technology. I'm all for great technologies that can make, the reason we created technologies was to make our lives easier. We didn't have to be battling the elements. We built houses, and then we had times to use our mind to create art and architecture and beauty and start to activate the higher centers. That's what I want to talk to Nadi about tomorrow. It's like, what happens, Nadi, when we have all our needs taken care of? The aliens have landed. They've given us free energy. Everyone's living in abundance. I know it's hopeful and sort of idealistic, but what happens next? This is sort of a thesis I'm developing.
Alan, I have a thought about that. And it's that we have to make peaceful cooperation as juicy and exciting as this hero's journey in battling the demons and stuff has been. Right. We have to make it as exciting to be solving all our problems. Don't give us a world where everything is solved, because we're all still going to be humans, right? but we have to make this process of working as a global family exciting. One of the exciting things we get to do is restoring the Earth's health.
Right.
But can we make that as challenging as, for young guys with testosterone? They need something to do that's challenging. So it has to be daring. They have to compete. And if it's digging the biggest hole or flying the highest plane or getting the greenest fuel or whatever, it must be exciting to them.
But the other exciting thing, I think, is creativity. It's like, and when we create, we experience more emotion. We feel more. The idea of sometimes you hear a song and you didn't know you felt that until you hear the song. And it's like, I think that's what we're really incarnated to do. This is what William Blake said. The imagination is the embodiment of humans. So
We are
that's just-
creators every moment.
That the point of competition is to drive excellence. The original, the idea behind the Olympics is to challenge each other to greater and greater excellence and greater creativity.
right.
And
But we don't have to,
that's-
we don't have
that's
to,
how
we
you
don't
make it
need,
exciting.
but we don't need competition. We can challenge ourselves.
You know, I think you do, Alan. I think you need
I
that testosterone outlet. There's a drive to
I have my
excel.
testosterone outlets other ways.
I don't know. I personally think love is a pretty good motivator.
Yes.
I
Well,
want to jump in, but Kat was saying something a minute ago.
oh yeah, what were you saying, Kat?
I was just agreeing. I was just saying we are creators. That's what we
Oh,
are,
yeah.
creators. It's nonstop creating. That's what we do in our minds and our thoughts, So yeah, I mean, and I don't know where Alan's going with his testosterone.
No, you don't know where I'm going with what?
Your testosterone levels.
We'll talk about it later.
But all of it, part of what I'm really enjoying is deprogramming and reprogramming. I mentioned that. And I think there's worth some examination if we're talking about testosterone and challenging and competition. I think those are programs. And I think that there would be a time where, I think that those are based on lack and separation. And I think that if we were getting our needs met, there would be a time where we were stopping to say, wait a minute, do we need those things anymore? And we would be nourished in ways that we didn't have to use those strategies to try and fill what I think are empty voids. So I think that, Alan, when you're asking about that, I think there would be a real aspect of reprogramming in a new reality.
Well, that's why I think competition is sort of an old paradigm, Elizabeth. I mean, that's
I think you're in danger if you try to get rid of it, but there's no reason why it should be hostile. There's no reason why it shouldn't be there only to drive creativity.
Well, do we need that to drive? Creativity is an innate structure in all human beings. Look at children when they're coloring and playing and drawing. I think creativity is who the embodiment of the human being is.
Right.
I don't think we need anything to drive it. I think we are it.
Kids get competitive. They don't start competitive. They start creative. The competitiveness comes later.
That's right. It's a belief
So it is
put
programming.
onto them. Exactly.
It's definitely has been programmed by the whole Darwinian model, obviously, but it's been
Right.
programmed as a hostility rather than as would you give up the Olympics?
Well,
In
I
your
think
future
Olympics is
world?
about excellence. I love watching the
Thank
Olympics.
you. That's what I'm saying. The point is to drive excellence by challenging each other to better and better, doing, things that are better and better for the earth. Things that
Well,
are-
it's also about ego, the Olympics.
It can be, but I think when someone wins, they don't do it for their ego. I love it because they are giving everything they got. And it's not about competing against someone else. They are just
But
at their
that's
highest
where-
potential. It's peak
Yes,
potential.
But if there's no one else that's doing it, then how do they know to compare themselves to push further? So I kind of agree. So it's a little bit
Well, if there's no
on
one else
both
doing
sides,
it, there
because if
is
there's
no
nobody else
further.
doing it, you're like, okay, well, I did my best today. There's not a drive. So excellent.
I don't know. I have a drive that I'm not competitive.
Alan, this is a really good conversation that we
It
should
is.
take further in another meeting.
Yes,
Because I have to go and you have to
I should go too. And Nadia were you going to say
I
something?
think this is important.
I think
Yeah,
you're right. I
okay.
like discussing this because
Yeah.
yes,
I
Nadia.
think that, the idea of excellence, like what if we all innately knew we were excellence? I mean, there really is an issue of programming. And I think that I just want to cycle back to one thing that felt like a theme. And then I have one little announcement is to me, it is important to really support, promote the idea of compassion. We were this whole place where we started off of like, how do you help people come around? Don't we want to get people on board? Then you're just bludgeoning people the way they've been bludgeoned with what they're being told what they need to do. And I think that compassion and saying you're great where you are, it's going to give them the space to really do whatever's next for them. So I just want to go back to that piece. And then, in terms of the evolution, Alan, I'm really looking forward to our conversation tomorrow about what's coming next for humanity.
Okay,
and I wanted
great.
to put a plug in because Alan, you're going to be kind of emceeing in this wonderful Beyond Christmas, into Christ consciousness, this Beyond Being Human production tomorrow, which is really bringing a lot of people together to say what is next for humanity, what is our true potential. So it is, Elizabeth, I'm right with you. It's a really vital conversation, and Alan, I want to say thank you again. It's been great. And I'm going to check out when you guys do as well. But
It'll be on this channel, Beyond, what is it called? Beyond Human?
it's Beyond Being Human, but the special is, Beyond Christmas, because it's that time of year.
Beyond Christmas, because we're going.
It's a benefit for homeless, to houseless, homeless, to help out some folks and to have a rich conversation about our multidimensionality, our galactic community, what it means to be human. So it's a really
watch New Realities tomorrow night and join us next Thursday. And David, thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome to join us every single week here.
Well, I don't know if I mentioned that I bought your book on Amazon.com. So I'll read it
good.
And I will give you a little bit of a mini book report next time.
Oh, and write a review on Amazon.
And I'll even do that. And I urge everyone who watches Alan all the time and listens to him and believes that Alan is the Kevin Bacon of metaphysics, buy the book.
Not my...
6 degrees. 6 degrees.
Yeah, 6 degrees.
6
and
degrees
you
from Alan. Everybody.
And definitely feel free to join us, David. This is the same Zoom, and people, if you who are watching online, you can join us too if you want. If you send me an email, thank you, Elizabeth, and I'll put my email in the chat. And thank you, Kat and Nadi. I'll see you tomorrow, and everyone watching. And thanks so much. And we'll have Marla next week and a bunch of people. So I want to thank everyone on the chat. We had a really good chat there going. Natural Spirit and Brown.Flop, all my regulars there. Okay, I'm going to sign off.